Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how I created this bokeh background using pan pastels. Now, you don't have to use pan pastels for this, you could use any pastels. If you're going to use pastel pencils, it will take a lot longer. So that's why I prefer using something like the pan pastels, but the stick pastels would work just as well. I will have all of the supplies linked in the description down below that I'm using, as well as the real-time tutorial if you want to follow along on my Patreon. But I am using Pastelmat here, and I find this is a really good paper for pastels because you can get so many layers on this, and you'll see as we go through this just how many layers I do to create this bokeh look. And then I'll show you how I create the panda in the next video using similar techniques. I'm also going in with a little bit of just the titanium white here, just creating a few little circles in the background, and that's just going to help a few little areas pop a little bit brighter within our bokeh look. Now, I love using my pan pastels, and I only use the 20 pure set here. This is really all the colors you will ever need. If you want to lighten the colors, you just add a little bit of white to tint them. If you want to darken them, you just add a little bit of black to darken them. I know there's lots of colors that you can get from the pan pastels, so if you find that there's a certain color that you're constantly mixing up, maybe you'll want to go ahead and just buy that one extra color. But honestly, the set of 20 is all you will ever need, and that's all I've ever used. Now, the little tools that I'm using here are Sofft tools, and this is from Pan Pastel as well. So I'm using some of the bigger sponges when I'm going in with the color, but to start with the little white circles, it's almost like a palette knife, and there's a little tiny sponge that goes on the end of it. I love those for putting in more detailed areas, and I'll use those more in the panda as well. And I'll pick the bigger sponges when I need to fill in a bigger area like a background. I'm starting off with my light blue in the background. I believe this was turquoise that I was using. You could use the ultramarine or any blue that you like for this part. And I'm not following the reference photo to a T because I am going to create a little bit more of a bokeh look. So I'm just trying to get a little bit of blue spaced around, and then I go in with some of the green. I believe I'm adding green and a little bit of yellow here in some areas. And then I'll mix a little bit of blue in with the green just to get a variation because I can see a little bit of a warmer green and a little bit of a cooler green in the background as well. Now, I like to always have a piece of paper handy so that I can test my colors on the side before I go on top of my Pastelmat, just in case it's a little too dark or it's not quite the color that I want. However, if you are using paper like Pastelmat, you'll be able to cover that up very easily, but it's always nice to have something on the side just to test. Now, you can also use masking film to mask out your subject here, but I left my panda open because I do want to be able to go in once I start working on the panda to create that fur around the edges. So if I've got a very smooth subject with smooth edges, I'll go in and put a masking film on top, and then I don't have to be careful around the edges when I'm doing my background. But you can see here I'm just really going in and just adding some light areas, adding some dark areas, and we'll go in and create that bokeh look, but I want to have all of my colors placed down first before we can do that. Once I get all of my colors placed down, I do like to go in and just push the pastel into the Pastelmat with my finger. You could go back with one of the Sofft tools. I even try using the Pan Pastel blending pastel that they have, and I don't know if that really makes a difference or not doing a background. It might make it a little bit easier to kind of blend out some of the pastels, but I find they blend out so easily anyway. And I don't want the colors to blend into each other at this stage, so I still don't have a lot of pastel on the paper. I'm trying to do very light layers, and then I'll go in with my finger and just push it into the grooves of the pastel so that I can come on top with my next layer. Okay, so now I'm coming in to really create that bokeh effect, and I've got this little circle stencil that I'm going to be using off on the side, and I'm just using my white pan pastel for this. You could use a white pastel stick. Again, if you were using pastel pencils, you'd be using up a lot of your pencils doing this. But all I'm going to do is place the stencil over the areas, and I want to make sure I'm choosing different size circles so it's not always the same size that I'm putting down. And I'm just taking that white pastel and putting it into the little circle where I've got it down, and it's creating this little round white area in the background. And you want to make sure that you're overlapping them with your subject, you're overlapping them with the edges of your painting or drawing, and you're also overlapping them with each other. So every time you overlap a little circle, one's going to look a little further in the back, and then the next one that you put on top is going to look a little closer to you. And you just want to keep doing this until you've got your background covered. Now, you don't want to cover everything completely. You almost want to have like a few little clusters of some, and then some open space, and then a few more little clusters. But you can really just have some fun with this part and just put some of the circles down and see what it looks like. And it's really easy to cover them up, so if you don't like one, put a little bit of a bigger one over top of it. Now, once I'm done with this, I take my fingers again and I just lightly run over this layer, and all I want to do is just soften those circles out a little bit. So I found they were standing out just a little bit too much, so I just rubbed my fingers over the surface, just softening them out, and it kind of pushes them even further back into the background. You could leave them if you like it looking like this, but I found it just added even more of a bokeh look to it once I softened them out. You could also use the Sofft tool to soften them out, that little palette knife looking tool. You could go over the background a little bit with that. And I did try it a bit, but I found using my fingers worked a little bit better. I hope you enjoyed watching this process. If you want to see how I created the panda using pan pastels and pastel pencils, then click the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.